This podcast is brought to you by Legend Comics and Coffee in Omaha, Nebraska, located in scenic downtown Benson. They got a new location. It's absolutely gorgeous. Check it out. And by listeners like you. Go to Patreon/Two-Headed Nerd. Become a patron. Support this show.
Our story this week picks up where we left off last week.
Broadcasting from the Ziggurat in Omaha and caverns deep below the metro area, it is our pleasure to wish our brothers, sisters, and non-binary soldiers in the war on capitalism a happy International Workers' Day and welcome you to episode 740 of the Two-Headed Nerd Comic Book Podcast. I'm your head number one, and my name is Comrade Matt Baum.
And I'm the internet's Joe Patrick, your head number two. It's time for another bourgeoisie-bashing new comic show where we'll review 8 new comics from the last 2 New Comic Wednesdays. After that, we'll set you up with our must-read new comic picks for next week.
And finally, you'll get an amuse-bouche of our Patreon Extra, where, in honor of May Day, we'll be counting down our top 5 heroes with day jobs. But now, it's time for Joe and I to earn our goddamn paycheck. While we get this show started, it's review time in the Ziggurat! As always, our reviews begin with 4 comics from last week, and then we jump right into 4 from this week. Each one will be judged with our 3-point rating scale of buy it, skim it, or leave it, which has definitely gotten us fired from jobs before. Joe Patrick, what do we got in the pile this week?
This time, our hard-earned comics pile features the return of a cop with a serious squinting issue that makes yellow look tough.
That ain't easy.
A new boo for the creature from the Black Lagoon.
I'm just happy he's dating again.
And Jason Blip the Monkey's exciting series premiere.
Oh, I was so thrilled to see them back.
And some truly disturbing machete dismemberment. But it all starts with the secret history of Kevin Eastman.
New comics from Wednesday, April 27th.
We begin with a true story, Drawing Blood, number 1 from Image Comics.
I'm sure it's true.
28 pages. It's $3.99. It's written by David Avalone and Kevin Eastman. Cover by Eastman. It is a very Eastman cover, but I totally dig it. Art by Ben Bishop. Inks by Troy Little. And letters by Taylor Esposito. Here is your solicit. The legendary Kevin Eastman, co-creator of the iconic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, never heard of him, and former publisher of the popular Heavy Metal magazine, returns to comics with a look into the roller coaster life of a successful comics creator. When you create a global franchise before you turn 20, what happens next? Readers will follow the jaw-dropping journey of Shane Bookman, a cartoonist whose real life has become more absurd and action-packed than any comic book story he could dream up. Okay, not a true story. I was kidding about that. All right, I don't know if we picked up on it or
Sure.
not.
Are you sure this isn't like his permanent midnight?
No, I don't believe so. The story is mainly told through narration, and it gave me some really big sort of like Goodfellas vibes, but instead of a young Henry Hill learning to be a mobster, we get adult cartoonist forced into a criminal world here. It's kind of tropey, but it works, and it's a trope that I very much enjoy. There's a nice twist on why Shane is pulled into the mess, and I like that he is basically Kevin Eastman. He created an IP in the past, made him a lot of money with his buddy, but his buddy is definitely not Peter Laird here. And he's pretty quickly taken right out of the story. So now Ben Bishop is not like a name I recognized. Apparently he's drawn a bunch of IDW stuff, like variant covers and whatnot, but he's really good here.
I love the art.
Yeah.
I love his art. I'm not familiar with him at all.
He does a really nice job of like fleshing everyone out. Like the bad guys, when they show up, they're kind of tropey as well. Eastern European bad guys, but they've got really solid personalities also.
I loved when they showed up and there was the kind of showdown at the docks or whatever. And they're gurring at each other like rabid dogs.
Yeah. And his coked up buddy is just like, ugh.
I was like, are they going to turn into werewolves? And then they didn't turn into werewolves. And I was kind of disappointed.
Yeah. I thought Bishop like had a really nice realistic style in this whole thing. And I really like later where we see the creator sort of going, okay, I'm in trouble. I got to come up with money for these mobsters, even though none of this shit is my fault. No problem. I'll just create a new multi-million-dollar IP. How hard can it be? I did it when I was 20. And then Bishop switches to this very cartoony style where he's drawing like this like ninja raccoon panda thing. I don't even know. And it like starts pushing him around in real life. So you get both his very cartoony art and his kind of more realistic art. And then you pair all that with a flashback where he's like meeting one of his heroes that helped him out. And it's Kevin Eastman. Like it's obviously Eastman. Eastman does all the art and obviously draws himself as like the old guy meeting this kid or whatever. There's a lot of really good art in this book. I had a lot of fun with this.
The art is great. And I loved the little Eastman kind of diversion, you know, the flashback. I also like the little touches, like when they're in his apartment and you see a poster on the wall of the IP that this guy created. And it's very obviously a take on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they're like werewolves or something.
Yeah, something like that.
They're like, there's some sort of dog looking creatures or maybe it's the cats. Or it could be this ninja cat guy. That probably makes more sense.
I think that's what is going on here. Drawing Blood is a borderline black comedy. It pulls you into a wild story about a desperate cartoonist trying to find fame and fortune again, but being forced into having to make it happen for all the wrong reasons. There's very much a theme here about creativity and where it comes from and what happens when you try and force it. I think that's where this book is going. It's a little herky-jerky in some of the storytelling, but I really like the setup. And Bishop's art, along with help from Eastman, really sell the desperation. I'm giving this a buy it. It was just not what I expected at all.
You know what? I agree. And I was expecting to kind of hate it because I'm not really like, look, sorry, guys. I don't really think Kevin Eastman's that great. He co-created the Turtles. I recognize it for what it is. Those Turtle comics are fun, but modern day Kevin Eastman stuff does nothing for me. But this Bishop guy is great. Ben Bishop. I've never seen his work before. I really liked it. I like I like this kind of focus on the cartoonist or content creator, or a content creator is not a term I meant to use, but because that invokes like YouTubers and stuff. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like whatever. Instagram,
storytellers,
dude. Yeah. No, I mean,
writer, artist.
It takes just as much talent, Joe. It takes just as much talent.
Sure, right.
Logan Paul, Jack Kirby, same talent, Joe.
This was an unexpected surprise. And yeah, it's not perfect, but I really liked the tone, the art. I've been trying to think of it this entire time. The art I found very reminiscent of Philip Bond.
Yeah, definitely.
In the way he draws,
thin-lined, realistic, sort of
his
a little cartoony, but
realistic, but not really realistic. It's kind of like on the bottom of the cartoony spectrum, right? It's a good book. I had fun with it. I'll be reading more. It's a buy it from me. And now it's time for the portion of our show bought and paid for by DSTLRY. Our next review is of Spectregraph #1. Just kidding, by the way. We don't sell out for reviews.
We will take your money, though, if you want to give it to us.
We will take your money, but just don't expect anything from it.
No.
Spectregraph #1 from DSTLRY. It's written by James Tynion IV with art by Christian Ward, letters by Rob Lee. It's 48 pages for $8.99. Or oversized. All DSTLRY books are oversized. So you hear that price point and you go, ew, but they're like magazine size.
They're magazine size. They're perfect bound, Joe. Whatever that means.
Perfect bound means that kind of like square binding. Yeah. It's great.
That's okay.
They're beautiful books.
They are beautiful books.
I'm not denying it. Here's your solicit. New series debut from DSTLRY. Modern masters James Tynion IV and Christian Ward join forces to bring you their next horror classic. A ghost story steeped in the decay of a century of capitalism. For years, the mansion has sat strangely nestled into the coastline just a short drive north of Los Angeles. Rumors have haunted the place for years. Its owner, a titan of American industry, with a strange fascination in the occult and the paranormal, For decades, the richest men and women in the country have whispered to each other, trying to understand what he was building alone in that mansion for all those years. And now finally, with his death and his estate finally open for sale, they are eager to find out for themselves. Two of the most celebrated visionaries of the medium, multiple Eisner Award winners James Tynion IV, who you know from The Nice House on the Lake, Something is Killing the Children, and Was 0-Year-Old 33, and Christian Ward, who you know from Batman, City of Madness, it's World Tree, come on.
Yeah.
Invisible Kingdom, and others, invite you into the world of Spectregraph, which, let me tell you, is a tough word to spell, made tougher when autocorrect tries to have its way with it.
Yeah.
A haunting cerebral horror novel that peels back the layers of America's opulent wealth and uncovers the rot underneath. But be careful. Once you enter, you may never leave. Spectregraph is perfect for fans of The Haunting of Hill House and The Conjuring.
Christ, Distillery, we get it. Oh my God.
Long solicits. But you know what? I appreciate that this solicit really sells you on the concept without spoiling the concept.
Okay, yes, and they realize we got a $9 book here, so we got to sell it. And good for you guys.
I wish more, quite frankly, I wish more solicits were tiny stories in themselves.
Agreed.
Like what you write when we do books that need solicits.
Well, I am available if anyone's looking.
And while it is a silly little tone shift, the recommendations are
perfect.
Welcome.
Perfectly right.
And also welcome for a salesman.
The Haunting of Hill House and The Conjuring. They should do this for every new series. It's something you should do, especially because people that are coming in looking for comics and don't know, they know movies, they know TV. All right? Do this for all your new series. It makes sense.
Spectregraph is a ghost story, yes, but it's more than just a ghost story. There's some weird stuff going on here. I loved the twist in the prologue that gives you kind of a slight hint about the direction Tynion is taking.
I mean, that's kind of like, that's his jam though, right? Tynion comes in and he's like, all right, it's a ghost story. But you know,
there's a
all
moment
of
in the
stories are like that, you know?
Yeah. There's a moment in the prologue, which is set in 1967, where one of the characters has made a discovery, and I don't want to spoil it because it's pretty great.
No, do not. It's huge.
No, I won't. But it's just like, okay, well, if that's true, then what are we doing?
Right.
Well, that's the story. Janie is the closest thing we have to a main character here. She might not be the world's worst mother, but she's not great. she's not a very good mom. The rich asshole villains are a lot of fun to read. I can't wait to see them receive their much deserved punishment. I'm sure it's coming. No spoilers here, but every time Tynion flashes the story back to Janie's baby, I got twice as tense.
Yeah.
I was just like, no.
And it's no. You can see them turning the knob, turning it up. Yeah. Like at first you're like, well, what was that about? And then they turn the knob again. You're like, well, there it is again. And then they turn the knob again. You're like, oh, Jesus, what are we doing?
and then I remembered the Spectregraph prologue story in the Devil's Cut one shot that we talked about.
Yeah.
And I remembered what the actual premise is of this book, and I got kind of super sad. But we'll give.
Well, don't give anything away. Don't give anything away.
I'm not going to give anything away. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot going on, and it's bad. Beautiful art by Christian Ward. It seems more trippy than scary. But then at the end, the scares kind of kick in big time.
I think it works in the sense where it's like, yes, I agree. Like the color's completely blown out. It's beautiful. Everything is broken up into panels at first for storytelling reasons, but then those panels start to break down into other reasons visually.
Yeah, right. Yes.
And it just builds and builds to a point. Again, they're just turning up the tension like as it goes, where you finally get to that spread page and you go, oh Okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, shit. This is what we're doing.
Right. Because you've spent the entire issue believing one thing and then suddenly you're like, oh, no.
But I mean, that's the mark of great horror, too. It's one thing to go like, well, Jason's going to show up and kill a bunch of campers. Sure. Okay, great. There's better written horror where you're like, I don't know what I'm walking into. I thought I walked into this. I walked into this. It's great. You know?
Exactly. Like Cabin in the Woods is a good example.
Yes, exactly.
Where at first you think it's just this typical slasher movie, and then it's revealed to be this kind of meta commentary.
Right. That's not to say that the comedy is here. There's no comedy.
No. This is not a fun book.
No.
Pardon me. It's not a funny book.
Right.
It's fun to read. The colors are wonderfully vibrant, as Matt said already. Ward's design for the maybe haunted mansion give off big 13 Ghosts vibes in a fun way, which I call 13 Teen Ghosts, because that's what I'm going to do whenever you put numbers in the middle of your movie title.
Okay, old man.
By the way, that movie is terrible, but it's
get out of here. 13 Ghosts is great.
It's
disagree.
fun, but it's not a good horror movie.
Get out of here. I love that movie.
It is a fun, like violent, like
Shaloub is so good in that film. Get out of here.
I mean,
I won't listen to this.
F. Murray Abraham is all up in that shit. It's a good movie.
That movie rips. You're insane.
Look, I'm not saying it's not fun to watch, but it is not objectively, it is not a good movie.
Good horror movie. Period.
Fine. Okay. But like the clockwork design of the mansion and how things are pieced together and how things move around, like it's kind of a similar.
And Ward hiding like all the weird little like almost like Resident Evil looking puzzle things. Like on the pages
in the movie in the comic they call it like clockwork, right? And it is almost like an ornate clock.
It is very clockwork,
right. If Cullen Bunn is the king of independent horror comics, then James Tynion IV is like the Archduke or something. He's good, man. His horror comics are almost always a great time.
Yeah, I think they were like martial arts masters of two different disciplines. Like
two different schools,
They're both doing martial arts. One is like tiger style, and the other one's like crane style. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, there you go.
Cullen Bunn is very good at what he does, but he doesn't go maybe as psychologically deep as Tynion does, or mess with the reader as much as Tynion does.
Right. I agree with that. Tynion and Ward deliver a hauntingly tense ghost story. It's got an interesting twist. It's got gorgeous art. This is a buy it. I really liked it.
Huge buy it. Absolutely. Now let's take a look at that other style of horror I was literally just talking about. It's time for Universal Monsters. Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives. #1 from Image Skybound. This is part of a licensing thing they did with Universal. They're doing a bunch of the monsters, right?
Yeah, they're all branded like Universal Monsters, whatever.
Well, we can't have these monsters without knowing. I mean, like, I don't even want to read about these monsters unless I know exactly what Hollywood film house they came out of, Joe.
Well, look, the Creature from the Black Lagoon specifically is there is no like folklore.
Right, they made this for them. It's 32 pages for $4.99. It's written by Ram V and Dan Waters. Cover and art by Matthew Roberts. Colors by Dave Stewart and letters by DC Hopkins. Here's your solicit. Acclaimed creators, Dan Waters, who worked on Homesick Pilots and Lucifer. Ram V, who worked on The Many Deaths of Layla Starr and Batman Detective Comics. In fact, he hasn't been fired yet. He's still doing that.
And Rare Flavors.
And
penultimate issue came out this week.
That's true. And Matthew Roberts of Manifest Destiny, a book that I loved.
I lost track of that book.
From the depths.
It was good.
Rise from the depths for an all-new epic. Years after the events of the original film, journalist Kate Marsden hunts for a notorious serial killer in the heart of the Amazon. Hot on the trail of this madman, she soon encounters an unexpected new threat. But is it friend or foe? Or is it simply the creature from the Black Lagoon?
That's such a great solicit.
It's fantastic.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, you know what you're getting when you go into these books. It's a monster book. And the Creature from the Black Lagoon is like sort of like Bigfoot not going to have a lot of conversation. It's not going to have a lot of high drama, it's just like the alien from Aliens.
Or Frankenstein.
The creature of the Black Lagoon it's truly a monster, right? Like the alien xenomorph, like Bigfoot.
Yeah.
It's not going to show up and read a sonnet or scare people like the family opera behind it. The whole idea is it's out there.
It's not a man.
Right.
It's not a man. It's a creature.
Well, it may or may not be. It is a mystery as to what it is, right? And it will be in the jungle somewhere. It will be in the river somewhere. And they do such an excellent job of building that tension when you need that tension, but also not making the book a one-note horror book about a monster sneaking around. The main character, Kate, is actually captivating, very interesting, and a journalist that is on a mission to catch a serial killer and gets like way too close to the story. And I don't want to spoil anything, but
I think that, it's a little tropey, the damaged journalist with a pill popping problem, whatever.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. But
she is captivating, and I enjoyed reading her story. Yeah,
it totally works because you get why a reporter, like you can't just send a normal person to go do something. Like somebody with a family in a good mood, they'd be like, "Fuck this, I'm out of here."
No, you gotta be messed up a little bit.
You have to have the damaged character, and they do that really well. I loved the opening where they're setting everything up, and like she wakes up and she's like talking to her boss, and he's like, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but he's like, "Oh, you're crazy, whatever," and she's like, "No, so close." And they keep panning to like outside, and then there's like back to her, and then back to the streets, and then back to her on the streets, and then there's this long establishing shot of the jungle, like this is where she's going, and then she's walking by like this little table with a bunch of figurines on it, and it zooms in on one of the figurines, and the figurines are obviously all weird jungle monsters, and one of them is absolutely the creature from the Black Lagoon. And then it's like the creature from the Black Lagoon. It's right.
That's the title page, and I thought that was really great.
It was fantastic.
You can tell that he is a creature of local myth. Yeah, like Mothman.
He's
right?
Bigfoot. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I thought Roberts was fantastic in art. Now this guy,
art is very good.
This dude did Manifest Destiny, so he drew monsters all the time, right? But here you got to do a very classic thing. You can't really like put your new spin on the creature of the Black Lagoon. People expect to see a certain thing. Like when you're drawing an alien comic, you're not going to go out and like draw, I completely redesigned the xenomorph for the Predator. Like people expect.
Nobody wants that.
Right. I want my Frankenstein to look a certain way. I want my Wolfman to look a certain way.
Yep.
And he does such a great job. And not to mention the fact the pacing, where of course we don't even see the monster until the very end. And when you do see it, you're like, yeah, there he is. I love it.
That's my guy. Yeah,
bring it on.
I mean, it's a good reveal because he's there the whole time.
Right. Of course. He's the star of the book. Come on.
Right.
But you got to do all this other stuff around the star because you can't just follow him around. Otherwise, it's like an Ewok adventure, Well,
when you have a star that doesn't talk, you have to have supporting characters or co-stars that can carry the story. And that's what they did. They set up Kate's story, and we get to see her deal and how she's connected to this legend and how their stories are now going to intersect. And so we have her for our, plot momentum. And then the creature's just there to do what the creature does.
Yeah. And like, honestly, when you think of Dan Waters and Ram V, who are both working on the One Hand and the Six Fingers right now, like one of the most wild psychological ideas you can have, not to mention Ram V's Batman right now is just like a fever dream of madness.
Dan Waters did backups in Detective, and they're a great team.
They really are. But this is out of their wheelhouse. They're doing something different. They've really boiled it down here. It's just, look, it's a monster story.
I mean, time will tell what the story ends up being.
I suppose, but there's nothing completely bizarre going on yet. It's pretty straightforward. And I think it's cool of them to be like, okay, let's not do the usual thing that we do. Let's do the opposite of that. Let's tell a classic monster story, slightly updated. I loved it.
It subverts expectations in a way.
Yeah. This creative team killed this. I'm giving it a buy it. I loved this.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I don't have a ton of affinity for the creature from the Black Lagoon. Like, I've seen all the original Universal monster movies.
Neat monster, sure, but the
every
movies,
nerd's seen them all.
Yeah.
Like, he's very familiar, and
he's no Dracula.
He's just like, right. He's no Dracula. Right. He's no Wolfman. He's no Frankenstein. So it's going to be a hard sell, I think, presenting a story about the creature from the Black Lagoon in the year of our Lord 2024.
Maybe your
and.
Lord.
Dan Waters and Ram V and the artist, again, whose name I'm blanking on because I wasn't familiar with his work.
Dan Waters.
Matthew Roberts.
Matthew Roberts. Thank you.
I think that they do a phenomenal job setting up a compelling story and giving me a reason to come back and read about this monster that previously I didn't really care that much about.
Yeah. I mean, cooler than the Invisible Man. I'm saying if you're counting down.
I mean, I don't give no shits about
Dracula,
the
Frankenstein,
there's a hierarchy of Universal
Wolfman,
monsters,
and then I'm going Creature of the Black Lagoon, Invisible Man, Phantom of the Opera. That's my order.
Frankenstein's got to be in there too, but yeah,
Frankenstein was my number 2.
Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh yeah,
Bride. I mean, she gets her own entry.
I mean, I guess I would sure,
but I mean. But yes, I agree. Like, he's lower on the totem pole than some of your more classic.
Sure.
Oh, there's also the Mummy, who I also don't give a shit about.
Oh, I really like the Mummy.
But this comic is great. It was compelling. It was gorgeous. It's a buy it. And it made me want to go check out the Dracula one, which I kind of ignored.
It was fantastic.
That one's by Tinian.
Yes.
That one's by James Tinian.
That was on a lot of people's best of 2023. It was amazing. Yeah.
Well, while we're on the subject of characters nobody gave a shit about, it's Dick Tracy #1. You know what? There's kind of a theme with this week's episode. There's a lot of unexpected revivals going on in this week's
Tracy. I hadn't thought of it, but yes, absolutely. And DSTLRY books.
This is from Mad Cave Studios. I think this might be our first Mad Cave review.
So dig on this. Cover of this says 10 years of Mad Cave. And I looked at that and
They've been around a long time.
No shit. I had no idea.
I mean, I've definitely seen their name on like lists of release.
I guess I just didn't feel like I've been seeing it for that, but 10 years. That seems.
I don't know that I've ever read a Mad Cave.
How do we miss that? How do we miss 10 years of this?
I don't know.
We're terrible at our jobs. That's how. There you go.
Well, I mean, hey, now they've got creators of the caliber of writer Alex Segura and Michael Morisi co-writing, art by Geraldo Borges, creative consulting by Chantel Amy Osman, colors by Mark Englert, letters by Jim Campbell. It's 32 pages for $4.99. Here is your solicit. It is also very long. A new era for the iconic detective starts here from best-selling and acclaimed authors Alex Segura and Michael Morisi, as an all-new noir-infused chapter in the Dick Tracy legacy kicks off with superstar artist Geraldo Borges. In the aftermath of World War II, the country stands frozen, waiting for the next shoe to drop. In the city, a brutal murder draws the attention of rising star Detective Dick Tracy, who soon discovers the bloodshed is just the beginning of a complicated web that threatens to ensnare everything he cares about. Blending the classic elements of Dick Tracy's world, including his iconic villains, supporting cast, and unforgettable watch radio, with a hard-boiled and realistic take, Dick Tracy #1 kicks off a fresh and modern take on the iconic detective that remains true to his rich history. You know what? No wrist radio in this issue, though.
Not so far. No.
But we know it's there.
And
he's wearing it.
When they updated him, we get to see his eyeballs. That's nice.
Yeah, right.
He looks like a human being.
This ain't no comic strip, boys and girls. Segura and Morisi's Dick Tracy reboot is brutally serious. Despite the shift in tone, I'd say that Tracy is instantly recognizable. He's larger than life. He's still wearing that bright yellow coat and hat without fear.
Yeah, I like the choice they made to, like, he's still kind of a cheeseball. Like a little bit. He's not like the other detectives are like, who is this guy? And like, what is this guy going to do? And he's like,
I mean, it's kind of like a superhero costume almost.
Almost. But I mean, like the way that he carries himself when he's like standing in front of the chief, I intend to find out why. And then I intend to stop them for good if I have to, you know, like.
Right.
And even the chief is like, okay, Dick, go get him.
Sure. I'm trying to have breakfast here.
Right.
Though I do have to say, it seems grossly irresponsible for Detective Tracy to involve Tess Trueheart in his investigation. He's telling her confidential information. He's taking her on crime scenes.
Yeah. I mean, like, look.
I mean, even if her dad was one of the victims, I don't think they let the victims' families participate.
No, typically no. But, you know, they're also...
It was the 40s.
So one, it was the 40s. Two, they're playing to the comic strip and updating it. And like Tess Trueheart was there all the time, you know. Also
the film noir style. I mean, it's not going to be realistic storytelling.
You got to have the dame and stuff. And when I read it at first, I was like, Joe's going to love this. I don't know. But by the end, like I came around on it a bit.
Geraldo Borges' art is fantastic. Yeah. He adds this gritty film noir look to Chester Gould's square-jawed detective. Even his goofy villains look intimidating, like a classic villain. Two actually classic villains show up in this. One you only see for a second. The other one you see front and center. And I was like, oh, he's scary.
Yeah.
Dick Tracy #1 is the first of 2 revivals I read this week, featuring properties with a history of being very silly. This issue was anything but a little cheesy, a little old fashioned, maybe, but I'm giving this a buy it. I thought it was great.
So I think it was a little cheesier than you thought it was. Like if we're going to update this and we've got, you know, no spoilers here, but we've got a whole restaurant of people getting gunned down and it's pretty violent. Like you've updated that. But then like when a bad guy shows up, Dick Tracy shoots a fire hydrant to spray him with water instead of just shooting the bad guy in the face. You know?
Well, he was hiding. He was undercover.
I mean,
he was ducking behind cover.
I understand that. But in the scene, he is like leaning out in plain view of the dude and choosing to shoot the fire hydrant and spray him. You know?
He wants the guy to lead him back to his boss.
I know.
See?
There is some of it that just like, I get the cheese factor of Dick Tracy, and I guess I'm glad they're holding on to some of that. I also have no affinity for this character. I think this is probably the best version that I would want to read. I'm going to give it a very high skim it because this didn't make me go like, fuck yeah, Dick Tracy, I am on board. You got me, you know, but I did like it. And I think Borges is fantastic. And I liked that he did like some of that old school comic zipatone thing to make it look like the funnies a little bit here and there. Yeah. I mean, it's a very high skim it. I didn't hate this at all. He's a cheesy character and I get they have to hold on to some of the cheese, but I almost wish they would just been like, screw it. We're going all the way. Boom. Full on noir. Dick Tracy's plugging people, you know, but then you can't have Mumbles around too long. Like Mumbles going to get shot in the face.
Now, I'm not like a diehard Dick Tracy fan or anything, but I do have fond memories of reading him in the, you know, the Sunday Funnies and stuff like that. And I like vividly remember my folks taking us to see the movie in 1989. And so, yeah, I think Dick Tracy's fun.
My dad took me to see that movie and I was so pissed when we left. I was just like, what the hell was that? And my dad was like, this is what Dick Tracy was like. It was super cheesy.
Dick Tracy is a good movie.
God, I hated it. Hated it.
New comics from Wednesday, May 1st.
And now we move to the feel bad portion of the second part of our reviews, better known as everything that came out this week except for one comic book. This is Get Fury, #1 from Marvel Max, 28 pages, $3.99.
Wait, what?
Like my next 2 books are massive punches in the stomach.
Oh, you're saying everything from this week is feel bad except for one comic.
Yeah, except for one comic.
That's fair. That's fair.
This is Get Fury, #1 from Marvel Max, 28 pages, $3.99, written by Garth Ennis, cover by Dave Johnson, art by Jason Burrows. I mean, okay, look, when you hear the name Garth Ennis and Jason Burrows are doing a comic book, it's not going to be My Little Pony.
Yeah, and let me tell you, when I saw Jason Burrows' name, I was like, uh-oh.
And I love that about him. I love it.
Like 15 pages into the book, I was like, I had almost forgotten.
I know. I'm like, what? Okay, I'll get to that. Don't say anything else.
Okay, I won't.
Inks by Guillermo Ortega, colors by Nolan Woodard, and letters by Rob Steen. Here's your solicit. Garth Ennis returns to Marvel with Nick Fury and Frank Castles you've never seen. Okay, that's not necessarily true because he wrote some old versions of these characters in Max books, and I'm pretty sure this is a direct continuation. But it's 1971. There's a war raging in Vietnam, and Nick Fury has been captured by the Viet Cong. At this moment, they don't quite understand that they have in their possession a man who knows enough secrets to damage the United States beyond comprehension. The CIA, however, does realize this, and they can't risk their enemy getting those secrets. So they dispatch the most deadly man in the U.S. Army, Lieutenant Frank Castle. What they do not say here in the solicit is they dispatch him to kill Nick Fury.
I mean, the story's called Get Fury.
Yeah, I suppose. For those too young to remember, Ennis's first Punisher Max work was the Bourne mini for the Max imprint in 2003. And if you're saying, what is Max Comics, Matt Baum? I'll tell you. Max was Marvel's black label, if you will, where you would go to tell more adult-themed stories that were more violent and not necessarily set in continuity. Bourne was...
Except it was not afraid to actually be explicit.
True.
Unlike Black Label.
Punisher Bourne was set in Vietnam and it told the bloody origin of Frank Castle that continues here. Ennis is probably the most talented war comic writer in the business. And when I say war comic writer, I literally mean any war. I don't care what war it is. Go get Garth Ennis to write that comic book, please. So this isn't all doom and gloom and hellscape. Ennis does bring some of his dark humor here. There's a really great scene where some MPs are coming around because there's stray dogs all over the camp. And they're like, hey, we're supposed to shoot all the dogs. They have rabies. And this one ranger, this huge ranger comes out and he goes, good news, no dogs here. And he's holding this puppy.
Literally holding a dog. Yeah. That was great.
It was great. Frank, however, is completely vacant. He is just gone. He is at home in the shit. Vietnam, like, didn't necessarily mess him up. And what we learned in the Bourne series is like Vietnam is where he finds out who he is. Yes. Yeah, that's true. I remember very vividly that Bourne has this thing. It implies this thing that I hate, which is that Frank basically makes a deal with death. Well, they didn't do it that figuratively, like in his head. Right. It's not like Thanos' girlfriend showed up and he was like, yeah, baby. But I mean, there's a little bit of an implication that like Frank sacrificed the lives of his family so that he could be the Punisher. Well, and I mean, fond of that take, I think he's explaining it to himself in his madness. His psychology is what he's doing. But as a war comic character, especially in this kind of setting, because you can't do Frank Castle in Vietnam stories in the main Marvel universe these days because he'd be too old. 99 or something. But in the Max, in the world of Garth Ennis's Punisher Max, yeah, Frank can be the guy that was in Vietnam alongside that grizzled warhorse of Nick Fury. Right. There was an Ennis Fury mini as well, and this character is definitely that same character. Like they mentioned some things. Well, I think there was one recently. I think that this is a sequel to one that came out within the last couple of years. Possibly. But there was also one earlier on in the Max days is what you were talking about. Yeah. So let's talk about Burroughs for a second, because Burroughs, as we know, came from Avatar. Drew some truly terrifying stuff with his friend Garth Ennis at Avatar. Yes. And sort of became famous for the gory guy that worked on Crossed. Yes. And when he made that jump to Marvel, I think a lot of people, Joe Patrick being one of them, was probably a little repelled. I mean, he's a good artist. As a guy that loves death metal art covers and stuff like that, I've always loved what this dude does. And here, like you were saying, he really dials it back. It is not the hyper detailed Jason Burroughs stuff he normally does. He dials it way back and it looks kind of like a classic war comic for most of it. And then you get to that page where we go.
Well, now I want to take a real quick moment and make sure that people aren't confusing him with Juan Jose Rip.
Yeah.
Who is also an Avatar artist that crossed over to Marvel. He's the guy that draws things that everything looks kind of crunchy.
Yeah. Well, yes. But Burroughs has a style too. Very
no, for sure. It's just, but I know that he can put that dog in the kennel, for a minute.
Sure.
Because he drew a run of Moon Knight.
Yeah.
But then you are violently reminded of where he came from.
That's what I'm saying. When you get to that page where we go, okay, this is why we hired Jason Burroughs.
Yeah.
Like, wow. The violence hits hard. And it's on purpose. They're showing you the hell of the Vietnam War and how terrible it was. And I think the pacing and the way that he did it, getting up to that point, when you get to that panel, it's like the body falls in your lap. You're just like, oh, God.
Yeah, it would be like if you were watching a horror movie or if you were watching Friday the 13th.
I think it goes beyond that. Like you're not at a horror movie. You're watching a period
in it.
You're watching a period piece, and in this period piece, a lot of normal things are happening. And then and then you get to this point in the period piece, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot this was the guy that beheaded everybody.
Sure, yeah, sure.
Ennis has war comics down to an art at this point, and I first wondered why he chose to return to Max to tell this kind of a story, because like he could tell any Vietnam story he wants, but the Frank Castle that he set up in Bourne is definitely this character and the perfect character for this mission. And I guess we're going to find out for sure if this is the same Nick Fury. No spoilers. But I got to say, this is not a fun comic, but you cannot deny there is not a better creative team to tell this story. I'm giving this a buy it. It was just great.
I think it's safe to assume that every Punisher and Fury story that Garth Ennis has written for Marvel Max takes place in the same continuity.
I think so. I just, we'll find out for sure by the end of this. I'm trying not to spoil anything.
Well, see, I don't remember much about the Fury miniseries from the 2000s.
Well, I just mean if Frank Castle puts a bullet in Fury's head, then the one in the 2000s where he's older and out of the Vietnam War.
Right.
Yeah,
sure.
It's not going to work as well.
Okay. Yes. Right. Yes. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Like I went into it assuming, they're going to team up, Fury's going to say, what is this bullshit? That's
not a Garth Ennis book.
Team up.
Not
but
a
I don't
Garth
know
Ennis
if that's
book.
the kind of, I don't think there's a guarantee it goes that way. So yeah, this is a buy it for me as well. I'll tell you the thing I loved most, and it's just a small little thing that really doesn't mean much to hardly anyone. Marvel put that Max label on the book and they didn't make a big deal out of it.
Say word.
They didn't worry about explaining it to people. They were just like, yeah, it's explicit.
It's Marvel Max.
They could have put the explicit tag on there like they did on the front of Blood Hunt #1 and left the Max logo off and it would have been fine. But no, they've got an imprint that's already set up to tell stories like this. And I think it's safe to say that at this point in time, that line belongs to Garth Ennis.
Yeah.
Even though there were other Max books by other creators.
Nah, he can have it.
In the day.
He can have it. It can be the Garth Ennis corner of the Marvel. Like they let Chris Claremont do his X-Men bullshit.
Sure, right.
Chris,
yeah.
Garth, this is yours. Take it.
Late night host Tad Ghostal goes back to his roots in my next comic. It's Space Ghost #1 from Dynamite. It's written by David Pepose with art by Jonathan Lau. Colors are by Andrew Dalhouse. Letters are by Taylor Esposito. I believe Taylor might be the only letterer this week that got more than one issue.
I think you're right.
It's 32 pages for $4.99. Here's your solicit. Greed and corruption flourish in the darkness between stars. With the territories of the Galactic Federation spread far and wide across the vastness of space, pirates and hijackers ransack the distant colonies with cruel disregard for the innocent scientists living within them. Yet there is a cosmic vigilante who metes out justice throughout the galaxy, bringing vengeance to those that prey upon the defenseless. Some say he is a policeman who has abandoned the strictures of the law. Others say he's a phantom, the sole survivor of a war-torn planet. And those who have survived his wrath claim he is more a force of nature, able to bend the very elements of creation to decimate his enemies.
Okay, Jesus.
They call him Space Ghost. And his adventures begin here. Award-winning writer David Pepose of Punisher fame and superstar artist Jonathan Lau from Vampirella Strikes kick off this action-packed series with a surprise attack on space colony Omicron, home of the brilliant scientist Dr. Jared Kepler and his young children, Jan and Jace, as well as their pet monkey Blip. With the colony's defenses overwhelmed, all seems lost, but these ruthless pirates didn't count on the wild card that is Space Ghost. This revival takes the Space Ghost concept and plays it totally seriously. There are no jokes. There's no humor at all in this comic.
I mean, there wasn't any humor in the original Space Ghost cartoon.
Yeah, but it's campy, right? It's like high adventure where there's a musical montage.
I suppose, but it was also like massively serious, you know?
But not like ain't nobody dying in the Space Ghost.
Well, no, not in the cartoon. I'm just saying, like,
mean?
Space Ghost was not cracking any jokes.
Right, but it was also lighthearted, I guess is the point I suppose. It wasn't a comedy. This Space Ghost is a man on a mission. I loved the explanation for why these two kids are in Space Ghost's care and why they're carting a monkey around with them. Yeah, that's right. Blip is a main part of the plot.
Blip, yeah. They gave Blip a story rather than just like monkey on board.
Love it. Yeah. The art by Jonathan Lau is pretty decent, aside from one panel that makes Space Ghost look like that meme of the dog on steroids. You see Space Ghost from the side stopping a guy, and it is like the most ridiculously rippled.
Well, I mean, the final panel, too. I mean, good God, this Space Ghost looks like...
but he's like... Okay, yes, I'll get there.
Okay.
The panel layouts keep things exciting. Overall, I thought that Lau's Space Ghost was a very Tothian brick of a man.
Yeah.
Like Alex Toth, like he's like how Alex Ross draws Superman, right?
Well, and
like
even in
he's
the old,
big.
Even in the old cartoon, Space Ghost was a triangle-shaped dude. He was one wide
but you
shouldered.
don't see like every outline of his muscles.
Well, no, I mean,
except for that one panel.
Yeah,
that one panel. This isn't the first attempt at a serious revival of the character, but I liked Space Ghost #1 a lot. Just be sure to leave your memories of the Adult Swim show at the door, especially when familiar and beloved characters show up. There's one in this issue.
I can't not hear his voice every time.
I know. I was reading the dialogue
laugh out loud.
I was reading the dialogue in his voice and giggling to myself as I read it. This gets a buy it. Like, well done, guys. This is a great, serious take on a Space Ghost revival.
So I like this, and I thought Lau was pretty good, but I thought they just played it really safe. I thought this is just, they updated the cartoon, and it's kind of similar to what you said about the Thundercats revival, where it's just like, well, there's nothing new here. I mean, they're just doing it beat for beat. I mean, basically.
Yeah, but we didn't know the story of Jane and Jason.
I mean, I guess, but like, do you buy that this guy is going to be like, all right, kids, come with me?
I mean, we'll see how he behaves in the next.
I suppose. Issues. And I'm not saying like I disliked it. I just thought they played it pretty safe. That's all I'm going to say about that. The art, Lau. Some of this looks great. And I think that's my problem with Jonathan Lau. When he's good, he's really good. And there's other panels where it's like, maybe don't draw it like that, buddy. You know, like lean into what you're good at. I'm going to give this one a strong skim it as well. And I like Space Ghost. And we just talked about in our Cosmic Long Box where we did cartoon adaptations, we talked about the Space Ghost that, was it Kelly?
Joe Kelly and Ariel Olivetti.
Joe Kelly and Ariel Olivetti did. And I really liked that one. because they were doing something like the origin of Space Ghost we had never seen and really giving us a feel for the character. Here, you know, he's just kind of like, superhero, there won't be any targets where you're headed, name redacted, because I don't want to give it away. And he's punching a dude, you know, like, it was fine. It's a skim it. I'm going to give it a skim.
You're nothing but a big old Scrooge.
Well, maybe it's because I read all these feel-bad comics like The Blood Brothers' Mother, #1 from DSTLRY, 48 pages, $8.99, written by Brian Azzarello, main cover and art by Eduardo Rizzo. There is a Dave Johnson variant cover that is like Western painting masterpiece. It is beautiful. Letters and design by Jared K. Fletcher. That's not to take anything away from the Rizzo cover. The Rizzo cover is also beautiful. Here is your solicit. New series debut by Brian Azzarello and Edward Rizzo, the legendary creative team behind the seminal crime series 100 Bullets. If you haven't read it, turn this podcast off. Go read 100 Bullets right now from start to finish. It's amazing. In the old American West, 3 children set off across a wild Texas frontier to rescue their mother, kidnapped by ruthless outlaws who gun down their preacher father. Throughout their journey, they'll face the harsh elements of an unforgiving landscape, deadly animals hungry for blood, merciless bounty hunters, and so much more. All in a relentless quest to rescue their family. Along the way, they'll learn the terrible cost of revenge, and not just in lives, but in how it stains a soul. While revenge may be satisfying in the moment, it leaves a yearning behind that lasts a lifetime. And once you taste it, nothing else is ever so sweet. In the tradition of The Searchers, The Outlaw Josie Wales, and Blood Meridian comes a brutal new Western series from writer Brian Azzarello and artist Edward Rizzo. The Eisner Award. Eduardo Rizzo. I already told you this. Now, again, they do the cool thing for fans of 1883, Blood Meridian, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. That is exactly like I listened to the Ennio Morricone theme, album of the good, the bad, and the ugly while I read this. And it's perfect. Yeah. The only complaint I'm going to have about this entire review, I have not sat down and tried to read cursive writing for a long time. Took me a minute. I had to zoom in on it like an old man. And Kate, my wife's like, what, you can't see that? I was like, no,
I totally get it.
Trying to figure out if that's an R or an S.
I had the same problem. It's just affected writing like that, where they do something to evoke a particular feeling or time and place or whatever. I think it's a great device. Sure. When it's used properly, and it is used beautifully. It's
beautiful. It's falling down on my end. Okay.
But the failure is on me. Right. Like Matt said, my eyeballs don't work so good anymore.
Earlier we talked about turning up tension in a horror situation, and Azzarello, I don't know if you've seen a lot of these spaghetti westerns, but I grew up watching them with my dad, and I absolutely adore these old Sergio Leone films. And one of the things they do is they start very slow, very little dialogue, and they show you one or two things to get across the idea. This is a good guy. This is a bad guy. And then they do another thing where you go, oh, I guess that's not a good guy.
It's the old white hat, black hat thing. Right. But then the black hats end up being the black hat ends up being the good guy.
Well, no, not at all.
Like sometimes
in the Leone movies, it's like you end up with no one to root for.
It
shows you like, this is the cruelty of the world. This is what the old West was like. And Azzarello is so good here. I did not read the solicit before I read the story, and what they talk about in the solicit does not happen in this story. Again, you get the story of this person who you think is going to be your main character and maybe the good guy, and then you go by the end, you go, oh, that's what we're doing. And it is so perfectly done here. My God, the art is gorgeous. Rizzo, had you told me, like back when I was reading, 100 Bullets, and Rizzo had that kind of thin, weird kind of style. It's all his. Nobody draws like
very
Eduardo
shadow
Rizo.
heavy.
Yeah.
It was kind of a noir story.
Had you told me like
crime story.
one day he's going to do a Western and it's all going to be watercolored, I would have said there is no way that will work at all. But it is beautiful here. It works so well. And just Old West painting style. Gorgeous. And it works even better when you're looking at pictures of really, really awful things that are happening to people. It's like you can't look away because it's so beautiful. This book is gorgeous. I mean, I don't know if it's coming across how much I loved it, but
does the book look okay? I mean,
yeah, it's perfect. It like, just like the old spaghetti Western films, the characters look sweaty and dirty, but they're filmed so well that like the dust is gorgeous. The red glowing skyline that it just is showing you how hot and awful this is. It's just beautiful. You know, it's so great. Azzarello and Rizzo are creating a violent Western masterpiece. And just like I said, in the spirit of any of Sergio Leone's films, where it's just impossible to root for anyone. And I guarantee the main characters that we see in this that are thrust in this situation are going to have to make some choices that are going to make you go, oh man, I feel so bad for these people. I loved this comic. I'm going to buy the physical copies of these because these Distillery books look so good. And I love me a good Western. This is the biggest buy it I could possibly give it.
I mean, it's good. I don't have the same affinity for those old Westerns as you do. Obviously, like they mean a lot to you, and I don't have that same experience.
They're just incredible films, period.
Sure, and I understand that from like the perspective of like cultural importance, but I haven't seen a lot of them. Like I don't have a lot of experience with them. I know that they matter, and I know that they're highly regarded, and so I understand the sort of things that this comic is trying to do. And so I enjoyed this very much. Don't get me wrong. It's a buy it, but I can't rave about it quite as much as you did. It is gorgeous.
It will reverberate even more if your dad made you watch Once Upon a Time in the West 5 times as a kid.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Instead my dad made me watch NASCAR. So,
that sounds like abuse to me, but
child abuse. Call CPS.
Desperate cry for
Now, this isn't the first Western that Azzarello and Rizzo have done. There was that Vertigo book.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called.
Loveless?
Yeah, I think it was Loveless. That's right. And I loved that too. No. Marcelo Frusen drew that.
Marcelo Frusen, Daniel Zazelj, and Werther Dell'Edera.
Yeah. So this isn't Azzarello's first Western.
It's not Azzarello's first Western, but yeah, I mean, these two are an unstoppable duo. And every time that they team up for a new project, you've got to pay attention.
Yeah, it's like
they've proven themselves.
Drew Baker and Sean Phillips.
It doesn't matter what kind of story they want to tell. It's like, yes, okay,
let's go. Yeah,
and that's what this is. It's you might not be a huge Western fan, but if you were a fan of these two storytellers, this is must read. It's a fantastic comic. It is probably one of the most beautiful comics I've read so far this year. It's a buy it, absolutely. Well, since we're already feeling pretty bad about things, let's wrap things up with Blood Hunt #1 from Marvel. For some reason, I blacked it out of my memory. I thought it wasn't until next week, but here we are. It's written by Jed MacKay with art by Pepe Larraz, and colors are by Marte Gracia. Letters are by VC's Corey Pettit. Glad we got a VC gang mention in
worried about Corey.
It's 40 pages for $5.99. Here's your solicit. The bloodiest Marvel event ever! The skies have gone dark, the sun hiding its face from the carnage to come. The children of the night, the vampires, have risen from the dark and hidden places of the world as one to drown the Marvel Universe in blood. Earth's final night has fallen. That's a nice, nice little reference to the final night. Can even the heroes of this doomed world stem the tide of blood that is to come? Join the Avengers, Blade, Bloodline, Spider-Man, Hunter's Moon, Tigra, Doctor Strange, and Clea, aka every character Jed McKay writes, as the Dance of Death begins in Blood Hunt #1. On sale in May.
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, it's like, this is good branding for him.
Thanks, Marvel. We know. It's May right now. Bloodline, for those of you who don't know, Daughter of Blade. That's the name of her book. Bloodline, the Daughter of Blade. The story starts moments after the end of this week's Vengeance of the Moon Knight #5 and the Free Comic Book Day special that's available this coming Saturday. But you don't need to read those.
You don't. But did you read Vengeance of Moon Knight #5?
I'm going to mention that here 1 second.
Okay, because I read this and then I stopped and went, okay, hold up. And then I went and read it and went, okay, I'm back. Here we are.
Yeah, I mean, sure. If you haven't read it, you'll be okay.
There is a thing that happens in Vengeance of Moon Knight.
There are things, but let the people discover the things. I
agree. I'm just saying, if you're keeping up and you want to go in order, read Vengeance of Moon Knight #5 first. Couldn't hurt.
Well, sure. For those of you that haven't been reading the series, though,
if you haven't been reading the series, you'll be fine. I've been reading the series.
That's the point I was trying to make.
So I was like, got to read Blood Hunt for the show. And went, I'm going to put that down. Going to finish Vengeance of Moon Knight first.
Well, yeah, because I got to the end. I got to the end of Blood Hunt, and I saw the checklist. And before Blood Hunt #1 on the checklist is Vengeance of the Moon Knight #5, a book I'm behind on. And I was like, I don't care about spoilers. And I went and I checked. And I saw exactly how it ties in. And you're fine if you skipped it.
Man, that book's great, though. Everybody should be reading it.
It's a good book. You should be reading Jed McKay's Moon.
Love it.
McKay embraces a lot of classic Marvel lore here, which a lot of their modern comics tend to ignore. You know, it's been kind of a bummer to me how the more modern era of storytelling has sort of set the more comic booky type stuff aside in favor of things that are more MCU friendly.
Sure.
And I think it started happening with, the X-Men after the X-Men movie and the MCU's kicked in. A lot of the Bendis New Avengers stuff.
I don't disagree, but I think McKay in everything he's been writing embraces a lot of that.
But this embraces. Yeah, there are some goofy characters in this comic book that I never thought that I'd see again.
Well, for sure. I mean, the Eye has been running around in his. Oh,
no,
8-Ball. Sorry,
8-Ball. Yeah, 8-Ball's a main character in the Moon Knight comic.
He's great.
Yeah, big action, huge stakes. Lots of hero blood is shed in this issue. So much so that it's hard to see how they'll walk it back. The villains have their own vampire version of the Avengers, and they're scary, man.
Fuck yeah, they're scary. I really liked them.
They're all new characters except for Bloodstorm 1, who is a character that actually dates back to the Midnight Suns days of the 1990s.
We're going to be talking about them next week.
Yes, we will. A little foreshadowing. He first appeared in Night Stalkers #6 in 1993, if you guys are curious. There's a huge twist ending. Huge. That I did not see coming until the final pages. That is the last moment that I will address it because I don't want us to even hint at it.
Right. They do a really nice job setting it up, though. When you go back and look, you're like, oh, shit. Yeah.
But so you're reading and you get to 2 or 3 pages left and you're like, oh, I don't know about this. And then, This issue was released with a much discussed red band edition, which it's stupid to call it that because that's a reference to movie trailers.
Well, it's rated R.
Right.
Whatever.
It promised more blood and guts. And it's true. The red band edition has 2 extra pages, but they don't really have any major plot points. They just have more gore. The biggest change is the final page, which features completely different artwork that removes all ambiguity from the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
If you read the standard edition, you might go, well, okay, but I've seen worse.
And
no, you haven't. So I promise you haven't.
Marvel's not putting this out digitally either. So if you want to read it,
it's only available in comic shops.
You got to go to your comic shop. And that was the decision. Yeah. I think that's cool. That's neat. Yeah. As silly as the idea of is more gore, I think that's cool that they're doing it.
like the other changes are things that they could like edit out, in Photoshop or whatever. They just
And it's
went
obvious,
in there and erased that pile of severed heads.
It's very obvious where those points are in the book.
Oh, I don't know about that. I didn't find it like jarring or anything.
No, not jarring. I'm just saying like, when I got to that page, I went, I'm betting this is one of the things in the red band that's a little more fleshed out, if you will.
If that does not seem like your cup of tea, the standard edition, which is what we were talking about for the bulk of this review, has the most explicit stuff edited out, none of the plot points edited out, and it costs $1 less.
Still,
so there you go.
Pretty violent.
Oh, yeah, Blood Hunt is brutal. It's violent. It's gory.
It's not like a kiddie book by any means. This is definitely.
I mean, it still has a parental advisory on it.
Yeah.
It still has that warning on the front, but it's not. Put this in a bag and don't let the kiddies go through it bad.
No, I was just surprised, like the red band, how many dicks were in it. That's like I didn't realize
so many dicks.
They were going to add. Like, why is Doctor Strange dick here?
Dick. That's a lot of dicks. Reservoir Dogs. Pepe Larraz might be the biggest artistic talent at Marvel right now. I like name another artist at Marvel that's making waves like Pepe Larraz.
I think it's safe to say that Pepe Larraz is the most talented artist at Marvel right now. I mean, that dude is just out of. It's incredible.
Everything that guy draws is just beyond gorgeous.
But he's also crossed a line now where it's like, sorry, kids. Pepe Larraz doesn't work monthly books anymore. He's only doing like we can only afford him for these gigantic World Series of comics. Like
we don't want that. We want Pepe Larraz to draw.
You're going to get him once a year for the monthly crossover. So there.
He's back here with frequent partner, color artist Marty Gracia. They are a perfect match. This issue is beautiful, as I said. Blood Hunt #1, especially the Red Band edition, does indeed deliver on the promise that this will be Marvel's bloodiest event ever. It's also a ton of fun to read. I don't know what's going to happen because some things happen in this issue that you can't, like, bells are rung that can't be unrung.
And I like it.
And now the story is like, oh, well, how are they going to get out of this?
Absolutely.
This is a buy it. I loved it.
So I'm with you. I'm giving it a buy it. And I think Jed McKay has been really good at doing just that. Doing things in his books where you're like, oh shit. Well, if you're going to do that, that messes up a lot of stuff. And he's like, don't worry. Stay on board. Watch what happens. Just stick with me here. And Vengeance of Moon Knight has proven that. It was one of those things where it's like, well, you murdered Moon Knight and you're telling me this is not going to be Moon Knight or it is Moon Knight. Like, what are you going to do here? If you stuck with him, you loved it. It was great. I trust him. This book was fun. It's got a bunch of, like you said, these old crappy characters. I cannot wait to see all these dumb Midnight Suns characters come back around and be like, oh, now you need me. Oh, I see.
Well, okay. I mean, this is going to be
I get it. The Avengers aren't going to call me and tell.
Right.
One thing I would like to see, I want to hold this up next to that first issue of Wolverine the Sabretooth War and really decide which one is gorier. And I'm talking.
I think the Sabretooth book was gorier than
I'm
this.
talking the Red Band one. Okay. I'm going to hold them up.
I haven't seen the Red Band one except for the last page.
I want to look at them side by side. I have a feeling that Wolverine book, Sabretooth War Part 1, is still the goriest thing they've ever put out. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, Wolverine #50.
I'm giving this a buy it. If I haven't, this was fun. This is exactly what you want from your summer crossover. Big, oh my God moments and old stupid characters coming back and doing something rad. McKay is so good at this. Buy it.
You can find links in our show notes for more details on these comics. And of course, we're talking about them on our Discord. But now, it's time to pick the goriest feel-bad comic we read from this pile to add to the THN permanent collection. Matt, I was going to say this, but you wrote it in the script. I think we know where you stand here.
Yeah, it's a Blood Brothers mother. I mean, like, that book is so gorgeous, it's going to make me buy a physical comic book, which I have not done in a long time. The big magazine ones, but yeah, easily in my permanent collection.
That can't be the case for me because, like I said, I just don't have that same fondness for the genre. though that was a very good comic book.
I also
for
love
me,
those
Blood Hunt.
creators too. God.
Well, yes, of course, and I do too. For me, it's Blood Hunt #1 because, like, how long have we been making fun of Blood Hunt? Just because of the way Marvel's been marketing it.
Well,
it's
and
just
even the name.
so ridiculously over the top.
Even the name. Blood Hunt.
Right, exactly. It's like so silly sounding.
Marvel's goriest blood hunt ever. Okay.
Right. Yeah, like Marvel's big selling point is like, look at all the guts in this comic. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't give a shit about that. But you had to know when you were going into it that when you see a writer like Jed McKay and an artist like Pepe Larraz, that book's going to be a good time. And so Blood Hunt #1 is going to be my pick for the permanent collection because I was instantly hooked. I'm hooked by the premise. I'm hooked by the twists. And yeah, it's gory. Yes, it's violent.
It's a vampire story. It better be gory.
But those are not the draws for me. The draw for me is Jed McKay wrote a comic that made me go, whoa, whoa, holy shit, whoa.
Yeah.
During the course of me reading this comic book. And yeah, I'm hooked, man. They got me. And I'm probably hooked for all the tie-ins. At least the first issue of all.
Oh, you poor bastard. This happens to you every time.
I'm committing
bastard.
I'm committing myself to just read the first issues of them.
It is time to head up to the Teaching Sanctum Sanctorum to make our must-read picks for next new comic day, May 8th. And here is a preview of what your local comic book store will be stocking next week. There is a horde of Blood Hunt spin-offs hitting the stands. Watch for our ludicrous speed round extra at the end of this month, where we'll tell you which ones are worth a shit. Monkey Meat creator Juni Ba writes and draws Robin in the Black Label Mini The Boy Wonder #1. It looks wild.
Yeah, it does. It's very different.
Misogynist internet trolls will want to pay attention and make sure to pre-order Faith Returns #1 from Valiant, because if you're going to trash your book just because there's a girl in it that doesn't have giant boobs and a tiny waist, you're going to want to know what you're talking about, okay?
That's right.
And
well read is well armed.
Joe has been holding his breath, waiting for Hitomi-chan is Shy with Strangers, Volume 8, the trade paperback.
Finally.
For those of you who don't know about Hitomi-chan, here is the premise. One day, while on his way to school, Yu Usami meets a new transfer student named Hitomi Takano, who has an intimidating appearance. Joe Patrick, would you like to tell everyone what that intimidating appearance is? Come on, don't act like you don't know. She's got gigantic tatas! Yeah!
Oh, all right. I wasn't sure what you were referring to.
However, he later discovers she's actually shy. Joe Patrick,
she's got a heart of gold.
Tell 7 Seas Entertainment and the internet how much you appreciate Hitomi-chan's chesticles. It's got to be your pick next week, right? We all know you love it.
I mean, my pick does center around a lady, but
it was cute how you acted like you didn't know. That's
sure. Yeah, I guess I should have assumed.
Yeah.
My pick for next week is Ain't No Grave, #1 from Image Comics. It's written by Scotty Young with art by Jorge Corona. It's 40 pages for $5.99. Here is your solicit. Miniseries premiere. Thanks, Image. Eisner Award-winning writer Scotty Young and Eisner Award-nominated artist Jorge Corona, the team behind the hit series Middle West and The Me You Love in the Dark, are back together with an all-new miniseries, Ain't No Grave. This Unforgiven-style journey is an original, macabre Western fantasy tale for mature readers told through a Guillermo del Toro-esque lens. Writer put her violent past behind her when she fell in love and became a mother. But that was before she learned it was all going to be taken away. Now she'll have to pick up her guns once again and ride to kill the one who's behind the threat, which just happens to be death.
Oh, shit.
The genre-bending adventure begins in this double-sized first issue with 40 pages of story and no ads. What a steal.
I like this Scotty Young thing, kind of like doing the Greg Rucka job, where it's like, you know what I'm good at? Writing strong women. Like, Scotty Young's been doing this for a few series now, and he's really good at it, I gotta say. The Me You Love in the Dark was excellent.
And I think he's definitely, with each new project, he's improved as a writer. And like the Me You Love in the Dark was really good. I love Jorge Corona. I love him.
God,
love him.
Good. Oh, so good.
And so I am excited about this. It seems like a must read to me. I might not have a strong affinity for Sergio Leone, but I do have a strong affinity for The Unforgiven, and I love Guillermo del Toro. So let's get into it.
Giddy up. That's you should come on.
Oh,
right
up.
there.
Sorry,
Dude.
I dropped the ball.
My pick for next week, it had to be Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, number 6 from IDW. It is 32 pages. It is $3.99. Here's your solicit. At the end of this issue, someone will die. There's no way to avoid it, so we simply won't try. A horrific plan drives the fate of our bear, and unspeakable actions will give quite a scare. Join us now as we finally lift the veil, as this, my friends, is the end of our tale. Now, wow. For those of you who have not been keeping up, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, number 1 was one of my biggest surprises of 2023, and I could not rave about it more. It is Richard Scarry's adorable animals. Also, 2 of them are serial killers. And it is...
Yeah, it's like...
it's the exact...
It's like the Muppet version of Hannibal.
It's the exact opposite of what we just talked about Jason Burrows doing in the Get Fury book, where Jason Burrows is so good at making something look absolutely violent and terrifying on the page. This is Patrick Hovarth, who is an excellent writer and a wonderful illustrator, who's basically doing a children's story, what appears to be a children's story, with the spirit of Silence of the Lambs or Hannibal Lecter behind it. And it makes the murder scenes even more disturbing when they're so fucking cute. It's not supposed to work, but it's so good. This book is wonderful. I highly recommend you go pick up these issues if you did not. I cannot wait to see how this ends. Oh my God, I love this book.
The THN trade of the week is Karate Prom. It's a trade paperback from First Second Books. It's 176 pages for $17.99. It is written and drawn by Kyle Starks.
I feel like every time someone says Karate Prom, it's be like,
Karate Prom. Here's your solicit. It's the best night of your life, if you can survive it. Now, I had to look this up to make sure it wasn't a typo. Don, the Dragon Wilson Jones, is the finest fighter Benjamin Harrison High School has ever produced. His nickname is the Dragon Wilson. Okay. All one word.
Do you know who Don the Dragon Wilson is?
Oh, it's a reference.
Don the Dragon Wilson is a martial arts movie star.
So they call him the Dragon Wilson because his first name is Don.
Yes. There you go.
There you go. I wasn't in on the joke.
Reference served. There you go. Put it on a plate.
Thank you.
Fed it to you.
You know what? And I appreciate the added context.
Yes.
But when he enters the ring against the Lincoln High's Sam Stedman, it's love at first knockout. Unfortunately, Sam has a jerky ex-boyfriend, and Don has a seriously terrifying ex-girlfriend, like global crime cartel terrifying. From prom to the after party to graduation, Don and Sam and an increasingly eclectic cast of supporting oddballs will have to fight their way through a gauntlet of opponents, all in the name of love and punching. Did we mention the punching? Fast-paced, madcap, and completely free of any kind of redeeming or morally thoughtful content, Karate Prom is a loving homage to teen comedies of the 80s, as well as badly dubbed kung fu films.
That's how you write a solicit. God damn, Kyle Starks.
I'm not sure how we could have chosen anything else.
I know.
We're big Kyle Starks fans around here. We've reviewed his work on a number of occasions. He's our buddy Hebrews interviewed him one time. We love that guy around here.
Oh, yeah.
And this was a no-brainer.
Yeah, Kyle Starks, another guy. Don't care what he's doing. Sign me up.
Yep.
Now, only one man can protect her. Don the Dragon Wilson, world kickboxing champion and star of the best-selling action-adventure martial arts series of all time, Blood Fist. Blood Fist 2. And Blood Fist 3. He's back.
Be sure to tell us what you nerds are reading next week. You can do that at our Discord. We talk about it a lot because it rules. It's a good time. You should get over there, talk new comics with us, and be sure to put comics on your pull list if you want to read along with us, because we're going to review a lot of these. All right? I'm not going to make Joe read 5 issues of Beneath the Trees, but...
Look, man, I will. Before we list this episode on eBay as a scarce socialism-themed show that killed the podcast, it's time for a sneak peek at our Patreon Extra. You can get access to it when you support THN for as little as $1 per month.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, patrons, or as I like to call you, real fans of the Two-Headed Nerd Comic Book Podcast.
Everybody, you're all fans, and
We don't give this stuff away to the free people.
We are not
save
mercenaries.
the good stuff for you people because you're special, because you're not poor, and that's why we love you. Poor
Yeah, well, the
people are
joke's on
gross.
them because the CHN Top 5 is like the most low-effort segment we can do.
We're also giving them a 5-minute free preview, and I'm pretending like the free people aren't going to hear this. That's the joke. See,
I know, I get it. I totally
look behind, peek behind the curtain there.
I'm in on the joke.
Even
Everybody,
more
we're friends here.
Even more ironic, it is May Day, and May 1st was designated in support of workers by an International Federation of Socialist Groups and Trade Unions back in 1889.
In fact, it is technically called International Workers' Day.
It's true, and we here,
colloquially known as May Day.
we here at the Ziggurat, we're the friend
of the working man, yes.
man, and that's why we appreciate people that have money to give us. And we're here to talk about our favorite working superheroes with day jobs. No villains. We're going straight heroes. But before we get into it, a little discussion, because there were things that I had in mind, like when we say day job, does that mean, you know, you got a W-2, you got a W-9, you know, you work at a bank, you work
It's
in Polite
something that
Society?
you wouldn't be ashamed to tell your mother that you did for a living.
Like, what if you are the head of the League of Assassins? Is that your day job?
That is not a day. That's not a job. That's just who you are.
I mean, tell that to Talia, but that's got to be a lot of work.
Okay. So being president of the League of Assassins is a little like being president of the United States or king of England or whatever. It's like you might go home at quitting time, but the job's not done. If you get a phone call in the middle of the night, you're getting up.
Yeah, that's a full-time job.
That's not a day job.
Right.
That's like that's your calling or whatever you want to call it.
Way more stressful than some, you know, wimpy doctor's job. Give me a break.
You're right.
You're in charge of the League of Assassins, but we're not talking about those jobs. We're talking about...
I also struggled because one of my favorite characters whose job factors into who he is Tommy Monahan, aka Hitman, who is a professional assassin.
I mean, that's a job, though. But we're saying...
But I don't think that's...
You got to pay taxes.
In the spirit of the question.
We're saying
I think
you got to pay taxes.
I say if the man can come down and stomp on your neck and you fight back, then that's a job.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
ain't nobody oppressing Tommy Monahan.
I mean, I don't know. He works with the mob. You know?
Yeah, I mean, but not in like an employment sense. They're not like keeping him from his health care.
I think we simplify it and we say, if you pay taxes.
Yeah, yeah.
You are on this list. You've got a job.
If you have a boss,
Right.
Well, you know what?
You're a working schlub.
I'm going to play fast and loose with the paying taxes thing, but we'll get into it. We'll get into it.
I mean, okay. All right. I see where you're going here.
I mean, my number 3 probably doesn't get a W-2 from anybody, we'll discuss it.
Now, to be fair, we'll get there, but when he was doing it, yeah, he was getting paid.
Again, we'll get there. That's
Okay.
number 3.
Let's start with your number 5.
Number 5.
Start with your number 5. We do this the right way. It's the THN Top 5 Countdown of your favorite working schlub heroes, right? The take this job and shove it kind of guy, puts on a costume.
Yeah.
When he's not at work, getting kicked around. Who's your number 5, Joe?
So my number 5 is Wonder Man. I've always liked the idea of Wonder Man's job. He is an actor, by trade. He was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. His first appearance was in Avengers Volume 1, number 9 from Marvel, 1964. And at first, he was just kind of this shitty businessman. He was a bit corrupt. He did some embezzling.
He was a criminal,
yada, yada,
right?
yada.
He went to jail?
I think he was gonna.
Oh.
But he ended up getting hoodwinked by Baron Zemo and turned into Wonder Man. And he parlayed that into a career in Hollywood, and he became a Hollywood action movie star.
Who wouldn't? I mean, come on.
Like Schwarzenegger or Stallone.
Right.
Like, except he could actually lift tanks and stuff.
So I've always thought of Wonder Man as kind of like a Schwarzenegger, where like he wasn't winning awards and stuff, but he made movies that made money. You know, so people.
Oh, yeah, he made he definitely made summer blockbusters.
People know who this guy is. Like, he's famous.
So,
Excelsior!
that is it for THN 740. If you dig our new comic reviews, check out our YouTube channel where you can subscribe to each show separately. Maybe you hate this show, but you really like the back issue show, or maybe you're strictly a gang hang dude. I get it. Or you can listen to all of them as podcasts on YouTube, music, or anywhere that podcasts are available. Next week, the back issue show returns, and since it's summer crossover time, we're going to read a different Marvel crossover, also featuring Blade. Get ready for the Slack Issues edition of the macabre 1990s blockbuster, the scariest comic book you may have ever read, Rise of the Midnight Suns.
I'm so excited.
This is good, though, because we can brush up on our Midnight Suns just as they're all showing up again. It'll be fun.
Sure. Yeah.
If you need more THN in the meantime, join us for the Gang Hang. We do it on Saturdays at 11 o'clock Central. You got to go to our Discord for details. Joe Patrick, what else can they do at the Discord?
You can follow along with my journey as I binge through 7 glorious seasons of The Good Wife.
No one cares, dude.
It's a great show. It's a great legal
I'm
drama.
Saying it's not. I'm saying everybody that cared watched it already.
Hey, me and Brian Domingos care. You can get a piece of the action with our nerd bet that Channing Tatum's wish to play Gambit will finally come true in Deadpool and Wolverine. And you can check out the exceptional Dune Sex Bucket cosplay from last weekend's C2E2 convention.
Yeah, they should have escorted those people out of there.
Maybe you just want to answer the question of the week. This week's question, we here at THN are friends of the working man, and Matt Baum, quote, loves a good socialist holiday, end quote. So in honor of May Day, who are your favorite heroes with day jobs? Specifically, characters that have jobs that you enjoy reading about aside from being superheroes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Like, a lot of them have day jobs. They just don't really factor in the story.
And a lot of them have day jobs that they couldn't possibly have because they're so busy with their adventures.
Of their activities, right.
Like, really? You're running a company, Danny Rand? Like,
sure,
really?
Right, yeah. Please keep your question of the week suggestions coming, and thanks to those of you that have sent some in or posted them on the Discord. I appreciate it. You can sign up for our Discord with the link at twoheadednerd.com/Discord. And once you're allowed in, we got a firm no jerks allowed policy. You can post about any of our segments there or send an MP3 submission for the Comic Pushers, Ask a Nerd, or whatever to twoheadednerd@gmail.com. We'll put you on the show.
If you're new to the show and you'd rather have your dick ripped off in a Red Band issue than listen to any more, I assure you it's only because you have not heard enough, and that is exactly what happened. I'm sorry for the spoiler, guys. The good news is you can hear the entire...
Thor had his dick ripped off. The thing about Thor's dick is that you have to be worthy to lift it.
It's true. Well, only after it's cut off.
I'm so sorry.
Once it's cut off, then it's a whole thing. Like,
this is the kind of content you pay for, you suckers.
Grab it and reattach it. You have to be worthy to lift that thing up, you know? The good news is you can hear the entire run of THN in our digital longbox archive at twoheadednerd.com. THN is obviously an adult show, and that's why I check that box every time we post it on YouTube, but it's also a listener-supported podcast. It would not be possible without the generosity of donors like our patron, Josh Josh Nicholson. Sorry, Josh, your name is so exotic. I had some trouble pronouncing it. That is my bad.
Yeah, Josh.
We have a long history of having trouble pronouncing names on this show. If you like what you hear every week, it's easy to support the show. You can sign up to be a patron at patreon.com/2headed nerd.
Whosoever holds this hog, if he be worthy.
Okay.
Before we go, our weekly shout out goes to original friend of the show and talented photographer Keith Binder. After an international call for photo submissions, Keith's work was one of just 24 pieces chosen for the May show at Black Box Gallery in Portland. Proud of you, buddy. That is awesome. If any of you listeners happen to be in the Portland area in May, and I know some of you are, be sure to stop by and check it out.
Until next time, true believers, remember to pre-order your comics, or your retailer might just tell everyone they've seen your hog, and let me tell you what, it is not worthy. This is the Two-Headed Nerd, signing off.
If you are worthy enough to pick up Thor's hog, what do you get out of it? Like,
I mean, I guess
you don't get powers.
You get to tell that story, Joe. You get to tell that story.
Fair enough.